There's a spider that we have down in Texas, and it's other places around the United States, called the black and yellow garden spider. Some people call it the zipper spider, because in the middle of its web, it always makes a little characteristic mark. It's like a little zipper of floss that it makes. And this spider is just amazing. They make a certain kind of webbing that is not sticky. And that is what they will run out on their web to catch a little bug. They have another kind of webbing that is sticky, that catches the bugs. And these webs are not small. A garden spider, a full-grown female spider, probably has a web about 2 feet across. Then when they catch a bug, they'll run out and they'll catch this bug, and they shoot sheets of webbing, and they'll spin that bug around and shoot sheets out, not just little fine strands. And I think that's fascinating, how they can control that. They know, I need a sheet of webbing for this job, whereas I need a strand of webbing for this job. I need a strand of sticky webbing for this job. They know what they want to do. She even has different colors of webbing, but she fills this egg. You'd think she'd fill it from the top. She fills it from the bottom. She goes under it and puts her eggs up in it, and then each egg she will dust with like a fine powdery dust, which is another little factory she has in herself so that the eggs don't stick to each other. And she'll push all those eggs up in there and then seal the bottom. They'll come out and they'll shoot out streamers of webbing and wait for the wind to catch it. And then they'll let go of the web and the wind picks them up. And people have found these spiders as much as 15,000 feet up in the air. And another interesting thing is, as they grow, their shell doesn't grow. They have like an outside shell. So they have to get out of there. And if they don't, they die. Well, how are they going to get out? Well, they have a little factory inside themselves that makes precisely the right fluid. It's called molting fluid, so that they can, on a certain day, they squirt this molting fluid in a certain place on their shell. Has to be the right place, and it dissolves the shell and makes like a little trap door. And so they can push that little trap door up, crawl out of that shell, and then they start growing a new one. And they molt several times as they're growing. Right fluid, so it will be the right thing to dissolve the shell, but it has to dissolve it in the right place or it still can't get out. And all of that has to happen on exactly the right day or the spider dies inside the shell. So, survival of the fittest. We should not have black and yellow garden spiders.
The Bible says that God, out of the dust of the ground, formed man. So I believe I've come from God.
This guy literally put out a video that said, on the thumbnail, share this video with all of your Christian friends. Share it, share it, share it with the Christians. They are on a mission to attack God. They're on a mission to attack the Bible and Christianity. They want to shut us down. They are the enemy, period. They are an enemy of the cross of Christ. The Bible says whose mouths must be stopped. That's where people like me and other people come in. We will shut them down, period. Their lies will go no further. And the fact that they put out videos and they define themselves as an atheist, it proves they hate God.
Down in southwest United States of America, we have different kinds of lizards, and a couple of those are very interesting. One of them, called the gecko lizard, has some very special characteristics. Its feet. Now, if you have a little pet gecko lizard, and they're friendly little things, you can watch that. It'll run right across your ceiling. You could have a ceiling made of glass, and it'll just run right across the ceiling. It doesn't fall off. There are like little hairs, little tufts of hairs. And so they thought, well, that's not enough. And that was with 2,000 magnifications. All over these little hairs are tiny little suction cups. But you have to magnify them 35,000 times just to see the suction cup. Now, these suction cups are so powerful that if the foot was not made in a special way, when that gecko, let's say, put his foot up against the ceiling, it would just suck it right up against there, and he's stuck. He's not moving. So his foot had to be made in such a way that he can use other parts of his foot to pop loose those suction cups. And why would it evolve that? And why would it have the right kind of a foot that has to be there if it's going to have those suction cups? All of that had to be there all at once.
This is proof that the devil himself exists. The fact that you could believe in evolution and be so deceived and so tricked is proof that Satan deceives, that you have been deceived.
He claimed that spontaneous generation must be true, not because it had been proven in the laboratory, but because otherwise it would be necessary to believe in a creator.
And so he's saying if spontaneous generation did not happen, then I would have to believe in God. Ernst Haeckel didn't want to believe in God. He wanted to believe what he wanted to believe. And so therefore he believed in spontaneous generation, or something that's known as abiogenesis, something that we've never observed in the universe. The first part of the scientific method is to make an observation. If we can't observe life coming from non-living material, then it's not science. You know, I was in a debate one time, and the atheist told me, he says, well, I can't believe that you believe that there was this Jewish man that died and resurrected from the dead. I can't believe that you believe in this thing known as the resurrection. And I looked at that man, I said, hey, would you look at what you're saying? You believe that every living thing came to life out of non-existence through spontaneous generation without any intelligence behind it.
The zoo to you, fish to fishermen, that's what they think.
Now, knowing you're a fish and not a monkey is actually really important to understanding where we came from. One fish lineage came onto land and gave rise to, among other things, the mammals and reptiles. Perhaps it's better still to think of us as a little fish out of water. You and I are fish.
Matt Powell, you are a liar. I claim that as knowledge. I know that you are a liar.
You and I are fish.
And, you know, you believe that you came by chance, or at least, I don't want to straw man you, but I think you lean more towards the fact that you think you came from a rock without any intelligence pulling the strings at all.
And what's wrong with that? And what's wrong with that?
He said, Mr. Holman, there are hundreds of varieties of dogs in the world. He said, you mean to tell me that you believe all these dogs came from 2 dogs off of Noah's Ark? You expect me to believe that? I said, sir, would you look at what you're teaching your students? You're teaching your students that all the dogs in the world came from a rock.
You believe that we came from a rock far enough back in time after the Big Bang.
Well,
kind of like
that's the theory. Yeah, that's the theory.
People like Matt Powell really piss me off. The fact that he's going around and claiming that he's trying to rid the world of all these lies really irritates me. He dumbs it all down to make it sound stupid to his audience, because it's a lot easier if you make something sound stupid to convince him it's wrong or it's flawed.
Beards can really take a hit. University of Utah researchers discovered human beards evolved to absorb punches to the head and jaw.
And my beard grow a little more. Research shows that flowing facial hair might have evolved to help fight hungry humans better absorb blows to the head.
So what evolution teaches us is that when we were primates, we fought so much and so hard and hit each other in the jaw that our jaw had to create a cushion in our face. Folks, that is weird, okay? That's not just unscientific, okay? That is weird.
Alpha male's got the caveman comes by. Fortunately, no humans were slugged in the name of science.
So why not? Yeah, this isn't science. So you gotta put it to the test.
I mean, real life experience.
Hey, well, put it to the test.
And my beard grow a little more. The findings are the culmination of several research projects by the same team on human resilience, including experiments on the ability of the human face to take a punch.
Did that hurt? Nope, got a beard.
he dumbs it all down to make it sound stupid to his audience, because it's a lot easier if you make something sound stupid to convince him it's wrong.
I want to introduce you to Dr. Job Martin. Dr. Martin has had a very interesting background. He's been a college professor and a dentist. He even served on the dental crew for President Johnson's Air Force One.
Evolution, as I was taught, it all started with a thing called the Big Bang. In the fall of 1971, I went to Baylor in Dallas and gave my first lecture. It was on the evolution of the tooth. And then they asked me to start studying some animals and see if I thought that animal could evolve. Well, the first thing that we really studied together was this little bug called a bombardier beetle. And this little insect, it's about a half-inch long, and it mixes chemicals that explode. So I began to think, okay, now how would that evolve? Let's say if evolution is true, and you're evolving along here, and you don't have a defense mechanism, because that is the defense mechanism of the bug. So if evolution is true, it had to somehow evolve that. So let's say it's coming along here. Well, the first time it evolves the explosion, what does it do to the bug? Boom, you just splattered your bug, okay? So splattered bug pieces don't evolve. So I thought, how could this have happened? Well, it doesn't blow itself up. It has another little factory inside itself that manufactures chemicals. A chemical acts as a catalyst so that when you squirt that chemical in with these other chemicals that are like in neutral, you get your explosion. Well, the first time it manufactured that little chemical, here it goes again, blew itself up again. But it doesn't. Why? Well, because it has like an asbestos-lined firing chamber. And even then it would blow itself up if it didn't have somewhere for the explosion to go. So it has like twin tail tubes. And it can aim these tail tubes all the way up, out the side, out the front. Let's say a spider is coming up toward its side and it doesn't have time to turn around and shoot. It can just take its little gun turret and aim it out there and shoot. The explosion on this little bug, all you hear, if you're listening as a human, you hear this pop. But scientists have now put that explosion in slow motion. And it's like about 1,000 sequential little explosions, but they're so fast, all we hear is one pop. And so you think, well, now why would that be? Well, that was a curious thing for the scientists that study this little bug. A lot of them are at Cornell University, some other places. And what they discovered was that if it was just one big pop, the little bug, if he's shooting like a spider, let's say over here, and he goes room, bang, and shoots it, he's going to pop himself right out of there. It's like lighting a burner on a jet engine, so he's out of there. But as long as it is a sequential explosion with his little legs, he can hang on. How would evolution explain a sequential explosion? This little bug messes with all the theories of evolution. There is no way a slow, gradual process is going to produce this bug.
When monkeys surfed, these are the first things that pop up. Now, evolution literally teaches that monkeys, they had to get to South America somehow because they found fossils over there. So the only way that monkeys could have gotten to the United States from Africa was surfing. The monkeys that sailed across the Atlantic to South America, BBC. Monkeys suddenly appeared in South America about 40 billion years ago. Unlikely though it may seem, they probably sailed there from Africa. Prehistoric monkeys traveled 900 miles between continents on rafts.
You know, surfing monkeys, surfing dinosaurs, it's perfectly plausible.
Monkeys who sailed 900 miles across the Atlantic. Intrepid monkeys, according to scientists, made an improbable sea voyage from Africa.
Basically, the dinosaurs, they also warmed the planet thanks to all the gas that they emitted from eating all the leafy plants. And in all, they emitted a total of 520 million tons per year of global methane, which is, they say, is a level comparable to the total given off today by animals and industrial activity. So they farted their way to extinction.
They literally teach that dinosaurs farted themselves to death. And then one guy says, well, Matt, you have misrepresented us. We believe that they tooted and it warmed the environment. That sounds even more stupid. And that's why they died. They died from the global warming.
Dinosaurs did fart themselves into extinction. All their greenhouse gases caused climate change, which caused, an ice age, and they all froze to death.
And this stuff is just crazy, but this is the crowd that wants to tell you not to keep your purity. They think that they have the advice for life. They don't have the advice for life. Just last month, a rock fell from the sky, and they said, there's the answer. It has the ingredients for life. There's the answer. That's lazy science. A rock falls from the sky onto somebody's driveway, and they say, well, it contained the ingredients, though, Matt. Okay, big deal. I could put a frog in a blender, blend it up.
A bull giraffe is about 18 feet tall. In order to get blood up that long, skinny neck against gravity, the bull giraffe has to have a powerful pump, and that's his heart. And the heart of a bull giraffe can be as much as 2.5 feet long. Big, powerful pump. Now, as he's going along here, living his life, everything's just fine, but all of a sudden, this 18-foot-tall creature decides, I need a drink of water. So he bends his head down to get a drink of water. Now we have a problem. Because now this powerful pump, instead of pumping against gravity, is pumping with gravity. And so the heart gives a mighty squeeze, and the blood shoots down his neck, hits his brain, and bursts his brain. And so now he just blew his brains out. Okay, so he's dying, and he must be thinking to himself, I need to evolve something here to take care of my problem. When I get a drink of water, I blow my brains out. Of course, we know dead creatures don't evolve. But he doesn't blow his brains out, because as he bends his head down, there are like little spigots in his artery that goes up the neck, little valves, and they close. But the last pump is beyond the last valve. And so it's enough to burst the little arterioles in his brain, but it doesn't go into his brain. The last pump kind of goes whoop underneath the brain into like a sponge. And this sponge just gently expands, and he hasn't blown his brains out, and he gets his drink of water, and now he sees a zebra kind of running up from this side, and he just ignores it. But he sees a lion coming up from this side. Oh, the lion wants to eat me. I got to get out of here. Now, how does he know the difference, by the way? Evolutionists can't explain that to us. But the fact is, here comes this lion. He's going to eat the giraffe. And so the giraffe jumps up. He runs about 5 steps, passes out. Not enough oxygen to his brain. While he's there, passed out, the lion is eating him. He must be thinking, I need to evolve something here. I got this problem. I pass out when I get up too fast. But he doesn't, of course. Well, why? Well, because God made him so that when he begins to bring his head up, the little spigots, the little valves in the artery opened. The sponge under the brain gently squeezes that last little pump of oxygenated blood up into his brain. There are little valves in the vein that goes down the neck. They close. And by the time he's up and running, everything is fine. His blood pressure is fine, and he does just fine. Well, how would that evolve? He needs all of those parts, all there, all at the same time, all at once, or he's dead. And so I think the giraffe is another example of a designer. He needed a designer to design him just like he is.
There is no logic at all into believing that one day God just decided to poof us into existence.
This one atheist responded to me recently. He's like, there's no logic at all into believing that one day God just magically poofed us into existence. Isn't that what the Big Bang teaches? It was a poof. So let me ask you, because they say, well, you Christians believe in magic. Okay, what's magical? Somebody creating the universe, or matter and energy creating itself from nothing?
People that take and consider this, they don't think about what they're even being told, that they evolved from a sponge, or that we all evolved from literal jellyfish. That's what evolution teaches, is that we evolved from jellyfish. I always like to ask people, do you think that your ancient ancestor was a fish? You know, it's like the incredible Mr. Limpet 2.0. I wish I were a fish. Well, according to them, we were fish millions of years ago.
Many of us were taught evolution wrong. You and I are fish. One fish lineage came onto land and gave rise to, among other things, the mammals and reptiles. Perhaps it's better still to think of us as a little fish out of water.
The woodpecker is a very special little bird. The beak of a woodpecker is like industrial strength. It is stronger than other birds' beaks. He has special feet. Most birds have 3 toes out the front, 1 toe out the back. Woodpecker has 2 toes out the front, 2 toes out the back, and that's so he can climb around on a tree trunk, a vertical tree trunk, right side up, upside down, sideways. He can crawl any way he wants to. He has special tail feathers. His tail feathers are different than other birds' tail feathers. They're more resilient, they're spongy, and they're very strong and tough because he tripods himself with his 2 feet and his tail feathers so that he grabs a hold of that tree, fans out his tail feathers, and then bangs his head into the tree. Now, you would think that a woodpecker would go home every night and say to Mrs. Woodpecker, "Oh, I got this headache. I was banging my head on a tree all day." But he doesn't. Why? Well, because God made him with special equipment. For instance, between his beak and his skull, there's a piece of cartilage. It acts as a shock absorber. His skull is the thickest bone per body weight of any creature. As a matter of fact, brain surgeons study the brains of woodpeckers, how they're hooked in there and everything, to help them with like trauma people in accidents, that they need to put their brains back in there. And so they study woodpeckers. The woodpecker, with his strong skull and his shock absorber and his strong beak and his tail feathers and his feet, he's all ready to go except for one thing. Once he drills his hole, he's got to get that bug out of the tree because that's lunch. All right, well, how's he going to do that? Well, most birds, their tongue goes right to the tip of the beak. A woodpecker's tongue goes as much as 10 inches out of his beak. Now, why? Well, because he's going to drill the hole, find the bug tunnel down in the tree, stick his tongue down in the tunnel, and drag the bug out. Now, you would have to say, could I stick my tongue down a hole in a tree and drag a bug out? Of course not. Well, how does the woodpecker do that? Well, God made the woodpecker with little barbs on the tip of his tongue. And he will literally stab that bug larva down in there because it doesn't want to come out. But in case that's not enough, he has a little glue factory in his tongue that manufactures exactly, precisely the right glue to stick to the bug, but it doesn't stick to his beak. And so he pulls that bug into his mouth. Now we have a problem, if evolution is true. Let's say over hundreds of thousands of years, this woodpecker got all this equipment, and then he glues his tongue to a bug and he swallows the bug. What just happened to his tongue? He just swallowed his tongue. You know, he dies, he just strangled himself, okay? But he doesn't. Why? Well, because as he brings the bug into his mouth, he has another little factory that manufactures the solvent to dissolve the glue. So he dissolves the glue, loosens up the bug, swallows the bug. God made him that way. Woodpeckers, when they peck, they open their eyes between each peck and they aim their beak, they focus, they aim their beak, they close their eyes, and then they hit the tree. So you hear a woodpecker out there, he's going drrr, drrr. Every time you hear that drrr, in between each peck, he opens his eyes, focuses, aims his beak, hits the tree. Why? Well, they used to think it was just to keep the wood chips out. But now the scientists have measured the force of the impact of the woodpecker's head against the tree. And the force is so great that if he did not close his eyes, he would pop his eyeballs out. So I would say, have you ever seen a blind woodpecker? No, they never miss. They never miss. Okay? Now, one special woodpecker, the European green woodpecker. I think he's unique in all the animal kingdom. I don't know for sure, but I think he might be. His tongue is different than any other tongue, as far as I know. Our tongue starts in the back of our throat, comes up and out the front. His tongue starts in the back of his throat, goes down the throat, comes out the back of his neck, up over the top of his head. It's under the skin, comes out a little hole between his eyes, goes in one of his nostrils, and then comes out of his beak. And you would have to say, now how does that evolve? I've asked evolutionists that question. I've said, now you tell me, how and where did that tongue come from? They don't have a clue. They can't tell me. I'm saying, well, you're telling me that this bird evolved from some other creature, but there's no other creature that we know of with a tongue like that. How did that happen?
Evolutionists claim, it says one plausible explanation, in our view, is that the genes are likely new extraterrestrial imports to Earth. These scientists declare that, quote, the squid eggs hitched a ride to Earth on the back of asteroids. That is what evolution teaches, folks. I am not kidding. I was in an interview with a friend of mine who's got it. He's an actual creation scientist. Now, him and I don't see eye to eye on everything, but he brought this up and I thought he was joking with me. I said, are you serious? We cut for a moment. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This is what they teach? He said, yeah, it's what they teach. I looked it up. Sure enough, evolution teaches that they hitched a ride on the back of asteroids. Doesn't that sound fun? And they don't get along anyways. Squids and octopuses are constantly fighting each other, so I don't know how they made it here to begin with. But of course they were eggs, and the article goes on to say that they were, they were fertilized. They don't know how, but they were fertilized so that they could hatch when they hit the water.
You look at a human ear and you think, that's a strange thing. I mean, we have these things that are here, and then you look at the animals, and they all have ears, and yet not all animals do. Many animals hear without ears, but we have ears. Now, the human eardrum is just a marvel. It moves such a small amount that you really can't measure it. Some scientists have said the movement of the eardrum with the different sounds hitting it is about the same as 1/100th the width of a hydrogen molecule. That's one of the smallest molecules. So that little teeny bit of movement can tell the difference between a trumpet, a bass drum, your mother telling you to go make your bed, your daddy telling you you can't have the car tonight because you didn't get in on time last night. And that little bit of movement differentiates between all those different sounds and then goes right into our brain, and our brain tells us, this is mama talking, this is daddy speaking, this is the symphony orchestra, and we can hear music. We can hear someone say, I love you, which we all love to hear. How? With just not even the width of a hydrogen molecule of movement. That's a miracle. That's a miracle. And that's right there inside of our head. Our eye, same kind of a thing. I mean, scientists have not been able to duplicate what our eye does. They cannot make a lens on a camera, and I imagine photographers would like to have a lens like that it sees clearly far away, it sees clearly up close, if we're talking a good eye, not one that has pathology or it needs glasses. The eye is constantly, it's like this. It's vibrating all the time. And yet the images that we see, they aren't doing this. They are steady. Well, how does that happen? Well, it's the way God put the whole eye together with the various muscles that are in there and the ways that it contacts through your ophthalmic nerve and goes to your brain, and we see things and the image is flipped, and they've done experiments where they put glasses on people and they flip everything upside down, and within 2 weeks' time a person with those kind of glasses can drive a car, and his brain is compensated for all that. And you think of just the way the human body works. How would that evolve? Now, when we think about this, we've looked at quite a few creatures, and you look at those things and you start to think, how could that be? Is that the result of an impersonal, chance, random process? Or could it be there's actually a designer, some power that had the genius to design all of these little things so that they actually work? And every part works with all the other parts. And it all comes out with these marvelous creatures that defy evolution in every single way. I think it proves that there is a designer. And I think I know his name. And I think he wants to have a relationship with each one of us.
Do you really believe that something came from nothing?
Yes.
Because there are laws, such as gravity, the universe can, and will, create itself from nothing.
They always accuse us Christians. They say, well, that book you've got right there, that's magic. That's a magic book. No, you know what's magical? Saying that the universe came from nothing. What's magical, folks? God creating the universe, or time, space, and matter poofing into existence from nothing? What if I said a giant boulder popped into existence right in the middle of this auditorium?
That as men study the creation, it says they study what God has made, because they are unrighteous, they will suppress evidence. They will hold back evidence. And I think that's exactly what happened. I think there are very bright people who study science and do a good job of it. But all of a sudden they get to a point where they have to decide, did this thing happen over long periods of time somehow? Or, boy, it sure looks like it could have happened just bang, just like it is. And then if they discover, hey, I have no way of describing this thing. In terms of evolutionary science, they're faced with the other option, which is maybe a designer and a creator, and they say, I don't want to go that way, okay? So they suppress that evidence. And so many of the things that I studied, we had to search just to find information on them because they are not in the textbooks. They just don't put them in because they have no way to explain it. There's a little bird in Australia. It's called the Australian incubator bird. Some people call it the mound builder. Sometimes it's called the brush turkey. And there's different species. We'll talk about one in particular. But this little bird, about 3.5 to 4 pounds, the female has 2 jobs. Her first job is to check out the nest and see if it's going to be okay. The male builds the nest, and then the female checks it out. Now you would say, well, big deal. She's going to check out the nest. Well, this nest is not like any other nest. Some of these nests have been measured at 20 feet across and as much as 50 feet high. And some of them dig down into the dirt 3 to 6 feet. So it's like a huge, that's why they're called the mound builders. It's like a huge mulch pile. So she comes and she digs down in there, and she comes out and says to Mr. Bird, I don't like this one. And so he says, okay, hang on for a couple months, I'll build you another one. Okay, so he builds her another one. Let's say she likes this one. Now she goes to job number 2, and that is she lays eggs. Now she lays 1 egg every 3 days for 7 months. And it's a little 3.5 to 4 pound bird, and the eggs are almost a ½ pound each. They're almost as big as an ostrich egg. Impossible, impossible. She's dead. I mean, you can't do that, okay? But she does. Now, this one species, the female makes a very thick shell on the eggs, and it has pores. All birds' eggs have pores. That's how they breathe. But this one, the pores are shaped like little ice cream cones, and the tip of the ice cream cone is in toward the inside of the shell. So as the chick begins to develop inside the shell, he gets to a certain day and he can't get enough air. He's going, I can't get enough air. And so he begins to scrape off the inside layer of the shell. And that makes the holes bigger. He's going up the ice cream cone, so now he can breathe. And so he does that all the way along till he finally breaks out of the shell. Now the male bird takes care of the nest. The female, once she lays the eggs, she just goes off, and now he takes care of the nest. Now you would say, well, is that a big problem? Well, yes, because each species has some different qualifications for the nest. And this one I'm going to talk about, the male keeps the nest at 91 degrees Fahrenheit for 7 months. And if it varies by much more than a degree on either side of 91 degrees Fahrenheit, the chicks die. So Daddy Bird is out there every day. He digs down into the nest and he checks the temperature. And the scientists aren't even exactly sure how he does the temperature. But he checks the temperature. Oh, it's 92 degrees. It's too hot. I got to do something. So he runs back up, and sometimes he'll throw sand on top to try and reflect more sunlight, or he has various things he'll do. He also keeps that nest at about 99.5% humidity. If it gets down to about 80%, the chicks dry out, the eggs dry out. He has to keep it at roughly 99% humidity. So 91 degrees Fahrenheit, 99% humidity. That's impossible for a little 3.5 pound, 4 pound bird. When the chick hatches out of its egg, it has all of its feathers. As far as I know, it's the only bird that it's ready to fly. But it can't fly because it's down deep in a big mulch pile. Now, nobody feeds this little bird. Dad doesn't feed the bird. Mommy bird doesn't feed the little baby. They come out of the egg, and then they somehow know, I got to get out of here. So they turn over on their back, and they begin to scrape the sticks and leaves on top of them, and it'll drop down on their chest, and they shake it off their chest, pack it down with their little wings, dig some more, falls down, shake it off, pack it down. It takes up to 3 days for them to dig out of the nest. And nobody told them to do that. Nobody told them to go. Which way? Which way do I go? But how do they know that? You see, well, evolution can't explain those kinds of things, all right? So here it comes. He's out of the nest. Nobody shows it what to eat. He goes off. He knows what to eat. He knows how to catch it and find it. And then the next year, the male bird is going to build a nest. But Daddy Bird didn't show him how. He starts building a mound all by himself. Nobody showed him how to do it. It's a miracle. It's just a miracle. And so you look at even something like a little Australian incubator bird and you say, how could that evolve?
Stephen Hawking said, and I quote, he said, if the expansion rate after the Big Bang would have changed by 1 part in 100,000 million millionths, nothing would exist.
wouldn't you say it's kind of foolish to believe that those odds happen by themselves without intelligence creating those odds?
We're not saying it's impossible. You're not disagreeing that it's impossible that randomness could cause it. You're just saying that it's very, very unlikely.
Well, actually, Stephen Hawking said, and I quote, he said, "We are a mathematical impossibility," and that is a miracle by definition.
It's a theory that we came from the stars.
You think you came from a rock?
Well, yeah, that's the theory, yeah.
There's a theory that we came from the stars, and we just gave away all of our technology. We didn't want it no more, and we started over, and yet here we are again.
But that takes faith. That takes irrational faith to believe that.
No,
that takes silly faith.
It takes an imagination to consider it.
Just imagine.
Yeah.
Even if this is a video game, we are still subject to those laws.
Just imagine.
Yeah.
Even if this is a video game.
It takes an imagination to consider it.
Just imagine.
Yeah.
Just imagine. Look at the look on Matt Powell's face.